the Caped Crusader minus his cowl. Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Batman Unmasked. In an attempt to alter the course of history, the Flash traveled back in time to save his mother's life. This, however, resulted in the crisis-level event known as Flashpoint, ripping across time and changing the world as we knew it for the worse. In this alternate timeline, Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne survived the deadly encounter in Crime Alley years ago, but their young son Bruce was killed instead. Driven by the death of his son, Thomas became Batman, and through his dark night is a far deadlier and more ruthless than the vigilante hero his son would have become. Before we tackle Thomas Wayne, not literally, I wouldn't stand a chance. Mess me up. First thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the figure stands. To do this, I'm going to take my tape measure right to the very top of his head, and we're going to stop it right around there. Okay. The figure stands 6.9 inches in height. Let's quickly switch that over centimeters, revealing that Batman Unmasked is 17.7 centimeters exactly. So the figure is called Batman Unmasked, but this is technically the second time we have gotten Batman from Flashpoint. Don't believe me? You really should believe me. We're going to move him over and bring in the masked version of the very same figure. Now, this is certainly a debatable topic, because you're basically getting the exact same figure, at least from the neck down. The top hat, at least the head portion, is, yes, different. But I don't know if I would necessarily say that just the swapping of a head from one to the other would warrant releasing this figure a second go-around. Let's check out the accessories to come include with Batman Unmasked. Starting first, we usually start these reviews with the display stand. Why change things up now? It comes with the same circular black display stand with the very same DC logo down below. I don't know if it's just my eyes playing tricks on me, but that DC logo seems a little fainter than the ones we've looked at in previous instances. In fact, actually, hold on. Just grab another one here. Maybe it is I don't know. Is it my eyes playing tricks on me? Does the print on the DC logo seem a little lighter than the ones we've got before? Does anybody even care? Nobody cares. Okay. It does come with the single peg right at the top corner there that will attach to the undersides of his feet. Stay tuned for that. I'm going to put that to the side. He also comes included with a trading card. Now, I'm not going to bring in the comparisons for this, but it seems to be the exact same trading card. Not exact. The only thing that has been really changed is down below. Instead of it actually saying Batman, it says Batman Unmasked. But it's the same image on the card. So if you were to put this in your trading card sleeves, and am I the only one that does that? You might just inadvertently put this in and say, oh, wait a minute. I already have this one. I've got a double. No, you don't. No, you don't. It actually says Unmasked next to it. Flipping around to the back, you've got all your stats indicating, if you can actually see, there we go. Source is Batman number 22, comics 2017. Real name is Thomas Wayne. Height, 6'2", and weight is a very lean, 210 pounds. Don't think that you got a double of this, because you really don't. Going to put that to the side. Speaking of doubles, he also comes included with a couple of pistols. That's not necessarily the double part I was talking about. These pistols so happen to be, as I reach off to the side, grab this one here, it's the same pistol that came included with the Batman Masked version. Really no surprise, really, when you think about it. I mean, why would they have to change the mold so that one pistol is different from the other? If, after all, we're going to be getting a double dip of this figure with a different head sculpt, why not just double dip the same pistols as well? I will say, though, at least the pistols are nice with a very faint brushing of silver that they've applied to the surface of the plastic. That's the case, actually, on both sides. You can either fit either one of the pistols into his hands. We'll go ahead and pick the figure up right now to show you. He does have pretty close proximity to being trigger firing hands. Go ahead and just take one of the hands, one of the pistols, and just wedge it into his hand like that. There you see. You see, almost there it is right there, the trigger firing hand. You can also do the exact same thing on this side as well, or if you would also like to store them away for safekeeping, then he has 2 holsters on either sides of his leg. Nothing has changed at all from this to the original one, so you can take the pistols and slide them down to the holster, which fit perfect. It's almost like they were designed for it. A little harder to pop these back out. I find it actually helps just to pop the bottom of the pistol, just to help free it from the actual grabbing of the holster itself. But at least there's a place that you can store it. You know what? Let's go ahead and take this pistol, follow suit, I'm sure, and just slip this into the other holster on the other side of his leg. Why not? It's there anyways. It might as well serve some purpose. And you can go ahead and store, like I said, the pistols on either side of his holsters, or on either one of his holsters. One thing at least unique to the Unmasked Batman is he does come included with a sword. The previous Batman did not, in fact, come included with the said sword. It's got some decent paint, though there are a few little areas where you'll see that the gold paint has just wandered off, decided to do its own thing, and a little bit of it ended up being on the blade. The hilt, as you can see there, is painted not quite red, not quite brown. I guess you probably could describe this as almost like a milk chocolate brown. I like the detailing that they did to the end of the hilt, and even like the guard has some nice sculpting there as well. Speaking of sculpting, you got a nice long sword. Was a little on the warp side taking this out of the packaging, but it is a very, very pliable plastic. It's almost like taffy. There's a few little notches and scratches embedded into the surface of the plastic, and a few little chips that they've put in there as well. I always appreciate those little touches of detail. The sword doesn't really have any place to fit on the figure. Well, not to the level that the pistols had. There isn't any slot or anything like that. So you pretty much either have him holding it in hand, or you're just going to leave it to the side and just never even talk about it. But we're going to go ahead just for the time being. I'll just fit this into his hand so you can see what it looks like. It helps to kind of just avoid this part altogether. Just bring the hands away from the palm. If you have any difficulty at all with your figures holding the weapons just because the hand doesn't open enough, just take like a hairdryer, heat that up. You can also pop the hand off and submerge it in hot water as well, just to soften up the plastic. With him actually holding the sword, it's actually a good kind of aid for me to talk about. I find like the sword is a little on the big side. Not the blade necessarily, but I find like the hilt seems like it's a little bit too big for Thomas Wayne's hand. Am I the only one that thinks that? It's possible. It is very possible. But those are the accessories that come included with Batman. Again, all the same stuff that we got before, except of course the sword. That's a brand new thing that comes included with this particular figure. So what new stuff gets brought to the table with an unmasked Batman? Well, just to answer the question right there, he gets an unmasked head portrait, as you can see, of Thomas Wayne. You know, I will say it's a good-looking head sculpt. I don't know why looking at it, it reminds me of actor Kurt Russell. Slightly more older Kurt Russell now that he's got the older gray hair. I don't know, I get a little bit of that vibe. He has certainly quite the squared-off chin. And as we certainly move this figure over and reach from the black hole, we can bring in the other one. You can see the difference between the two. You could imagine that it is the same head sculpt, though the mouths are very visibly different from one another. You can't just necessarily chalk it up to expression, because even like this mouth right here, for example, even if he's a little more ticked off in this head sculpt, it certainly doesn't justify why his mouth is a lot wider, which is definitely the case when you see the two figures side to side. The chin, perhaps you could say, isn't quite the same shape. In fact, when you look at the unmasked head, this one right here, like I really had to point to that one, it definitely seems like it's got a different shape, like it jets out a little bit more versus the blocked off chin on this head sculpt right here. The neck also is obviously different. They've gone away with the black coloring because that would be a continuation of his cowl and cape, and instead they've given him a flesh color for his neck. The neck, as a result of that, does seem like it's a little on the wider side. He's got a super thick-looking neck. Short of the fact that the neck would have been a different color, and obviously they wouldn't be able to do it that way, I don't see why this head sculpt couldn't have been something that was a swappable option when this guy was first released. It could be possibly the case that McFarlane Toys, when deciding to release this guy, they didn't have this in mind when they first released this figure here. I mean, really, when you look at the rest of the figure, head to toe, or at least neck to toe, It is literally the exact same figure. Nothing changes. I suppose there could have been an opportunity presented where they could have torn up his costume, have like little rips and tears on this costume so it looks more like a battle-damaged Thomas Wayne. But they didn't. And it's basically just the exact same figure. Same shaped cape. In fact, let's spin the figures around so you can see it from the back. Nothing at all, I know I just keep reiterating the same thing over and over again, but nothing at all has been changed from one figure to the other. It's simply just a case if you prefer your figure to have either the bat cowl or you prefer to have the figure without the bat cowl. That's the only difference between the two. Let's move that Batman out of the way because we've already had a look at him in a previous review. Feel free to check that out if you'd like. Again, getting a closer look at the head sculpt, focusing ourselves in there to have a look at it. Not a bad looking head sculpt. I will say also to the credit of this one, the stubbling on the chin is much more effective on this head sculpt. The other one, the original Batman, had only just the painted chin. You don't remember what that looked like? Okay, let's bring it back in so you can see the difference between the two. Yeah, it was basically just more smudging on the end, on the bottom of his chin. This has, like I said, a more realistic, at least, brushing of paint. At least it goes from one end of the chin to the front. So at least you've got that whole territory covered. The original Batman sort of just looked like he had a chinny chin chin. Is that what one of the piggies said to the big bad wolf? Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin. Anyways, we'll move that one out of the way. Getting a closer look, though, at the remaining of the figure's body. You've got the raised emblem of the Bat logo against the backdrop of a circular crimson red. That looks really nice. I like the colors that they used. Trying my best to really not retread the same information and the same opinions that I had on the original figure. I really didn't have any real issues with the original Batman. And so the things that I liked on that original Batman still follow up and still carry over, I feel, to this figure as well. He's got some nice sculpting there on the gauntlet. No additional paint really is happening here. In fact, really, when you're looking at the figure, so much of it is just the molded plastic. Just the gray plastic, no additional paint. The emblem is really the only thing that gets painted over top of it. The gloves being that there are separate pieces. At least these were attached to separate pieces. I don't think. Maybe they were painted in there. So maybe, okay, perhaps the gloves were about the only other thing that was painted on this figure. He's got a little bit of paint there on his kneecaps. And yes, there probably could be a little bit of paint also there on his damaged boots. I like the little bullet hole there on the sides. All around comes together as a really nice looking figure. The question really I continue to pose is, did this figure need to exist? I'll just flip the cape up so you can see the inside, and there's the remaining of his utility belt with many, many, many pockets. Many, many pockets. This guy must have been designed in the 90s. A nice flowing cape, I will say as well. Softer plastic. It's got a little bit of give to it. You squeeze that in. Now, you would be doing this a lot with your figures' capes, but I do like the molding on the back, and it also gives me the opportunity. I know I started this review saying he didn't have a cowl. Technically, he does. The cowl is folded back. You only see just the ears of the cowl, and all the rest of it is basically accordioned itself up and on the back of the figure. I think I've got a little bit of paint that has found its way onto his neck. Its mileage, of course, may vary sort of circumstances. I can't imagine it's going to be on every single figure, but I just wanted to point that out on this figure as well. I like the shape of the cape. I like the way it has that drape to it, and it has all these little curved shaped sculpts to it. That is a nice looking cape. It's definitely one of the better looking capes that we've gotten from a Batman. Yeah, honestly, I'm a little on the torn side. By the way, also, I like this side profile. Kurt Russell? Anybody else seeing it? Maybe I'm the only one seeing it. But it's a good-looking sculpt. Good-looking paint, what little there is of it. And it's a good figure that I never really had any problems with initially. Just again, I hate to say it. I hate to sound like the broken record guy. But did we really need just an alternate version of this guy? Simply just with an unmasked portrait. Let's tackle the articulation on Unmasked Batman. His head, despite for the fact he's got such long hair at the back, still managed to pull off a full turn, a full rotation. Granted, yes, it does limit a little bit what you can actually do to the head sculpt. You can only hinge it up this high, and you can also move it down this low. A lot lower than you can high. High and low. The head does also tilt back and forth, just a little bit. For his arms hinge out. And I noticed on this figure, as I'm doing it, I didn't really have this issue with the other figure, but it clicks a lot when I'm moving the joints. If that's just a sign that the figure's joints are really tight, I have no problems at all with a tight joint on a figure. I'd rather that than super loose joints. But I did notice that every single time I'm moving the arms, it clicks and makes creaking noises. Anyways, he does have the cup joint right on the inside of his torso. That allows the arms to move in a little bit more so, and also move out a lot more as well. Batman does also have the swivel in the bicep, which technically would allow the arm to rotate all the way around. You also have the afforded double hinge joint on the elbow. He has also the articulation in the hand. You can rotate that all the way around and also hinge it back and forth. Get that all straightened up. Upper torso is on a ball joint. You can rotate that all the way around. Lower torso, though, concealed underneath the utility belt. He also has the torso crunch, which also is basically just a lower torso articulated ball joint. Then for the legs split out. You'll notice as I'm doing this as well, I guess the little extra bit of paint was also here provided on the thigh. A little bit of red paint splotched there, but these at least being separate pieces. I'm glad that they're not attached to the leg. I mean, when you're looking at it, they've done a good job of matching the paint color to the strap of the plastic. So when you're looking at it just with the legs straight like this, you would believe then that the holsters are holstered also to the thigh. And it really isn't the case. These are just floating pieces. But the legs split out. You can go forward and back on the legs. There's a swivel at the very top, just really, really tight at the top of that thigh. A double hinge on the knee. Little bat faces there. No articulation from this point here, but he does have also articulation up and down on the ankle. You can rock those back and forth. And he does also have toe articulation as well. He's a good-looking figure. Again, I just don't want to keep saying the same thing over and over again. I mean, I really did try to find the positive points. He's a good-looking figure anyways. I didn't really have any issues at all with the initial Flashpoint Batman. Let's bring him in again so you guys can see the difference between the two. I would certainly say, and I know as of late, McFarlane Toys seems to be re-releasing a lot of figures that we already have the molds for, and either just changing the color scheme or changing and giving us a different head sculpt. I don't know necessarily if I would say that an unmasked Thomas Wayne needed to take up a SKU. Like, for example, if McFarlane was to release, let's just throw out a number. Let's throw out 8 figures in a wave. That might even be too high. Let's drop that down a little bit. Let's say 5 figures. He had the opportunity to release 5 figures in a wave. And one of those figures of the 5 SKUs was an unmasked Batman of a Batman we already have. I would almost even say it's not a waste of a SKU, but I feel like in a case like that, the SKU probably could have been assigned to a brand new character, a brand new figure, instead of simply just giving us the exact same Batman, just with a different unmasked head. I really hope you guys don't think that because I was questioning whether a figure like this needed to exist, it meant that I didn't like the figure. Quite the contrary, actually. Flashpoint Batman ended up being a great figure when it was first released. That dark gray costume color that they went with, the bright red that they used for the emblem, the utility belt, and the side holsters for his pistols. Not to mention he had a great looking head sculpt, short of just the fact he had that little chin beard that was painted in roughly. No, in fact, I liked that first figure, and I like this figure. This one has a great unmasked head sculpt, and a nice little touch of detail is that they have the folded down cowl on the back of his cape. More so, my opinion is, as good as this figure may be, did it need to go to retail? Because of course, when it comes to retail, shelf space is always something that's very critical when it comes to companies. They want to be able to get as much of their product onto a shelf, and they're always competing with the companies around them. Let's just say if the DC Multiverse figures were kept to only 2 or 3 pegs on a shelf, of course, you would want to have as many new characters on that as possible. You don't want to, maybe not necessarily use a shelf space dedicated to a character we already have, simply if he's just only got an alternate head sculpt. Could a character like this exist necessarily as a convention exclusive? I know conventions are a little troubling thing right now because of the way that the world is going, but could this figure not have been an online exclusive or a convention exclusive? Something where it would have meant that collectors would have had to track this guy down. It would have made, of course, him more scarcer than picking him up in retail. But I feel like this figure lends better to being a convention exclusive and not necessarily something that needs to go to retail. That being said, of course, McFarlane Toys and, of course, the DC Multiverse figures that he's putting out, he's doing this with actually a couple of figures as well. We've already seen that there's going to be a repaint of the Injustice 2 Flash. There's going to be, I'm sure, other instances as well that he's going to be re-releasing the same mold with something just slightly tweaked. At least to the credit here, it's not just Flashpoint Batman now with a sword. I would have probably a bigger issue with that. At least it's Flashpoint Batman with a sword and a brand new head sculpt. But again, I don't know. Did it need to necessarily go to retail? Let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of Unmasked Batman from Flashpoint. If you guys are also new to this channel, enjoying all the content you're seeing, be sure to hit the subscribe button down below. And of course, turn on the bell notification. Keep your peepers peeled to this channel as well, because even though we are finishing up the review here of Batman Unmasked, there will be more DC Multiverse figure reviews in the pipeline. So make sure, of course, you're coming back to this channel on a regular basis. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.